Hello, my name is Tracee Glab, and I'm the Curator of Collections and Exhibitions at the Flint Institute of Arts. It is my pleasure to talk with you today about one of the most popular galleries in the museum through a three-part series on the Rinaldo and Armida Tapestries. Frequently cited by visitors to the FIA as their most memorable experience, the Viola E. Bray Renaissance Gallery's breathtaking design, scale, and decorative features create a grand stage for the objects within. Among the highlights of the art given to the FIA by Mrs. Bray is the rare set of 10 tapestries depicting the love story of Rinaldo and Armida. Since there is so much to talk about in terms of the tapestries, I decided to organize these talks into three parts, or acts. The first will explore how the tapestries arrived in Flint, the second will focus on the story, and the third will look more closely at the symbols on the tapestries. Act 1, From Paris to Flint. First, let me say how rare it is to know the journey of a work of art that is almost 400 years old. There are often many gaps in what art historians call provenance, or history of ownership. As you can imagine, objects are often bought and sold, but there is not always a paper trail. In the case of our tapestries, however, we have a complete provenance and can account for every place they've ever been, a journey of 383 years and 6,293 miles. First, the place of its making, in the Raphael de la Planche Tapestry Workshop in the Faubourg Saint-Germain district of Paris. The letters P for Paris and R for Raphael can still be seen on the borders of the tapestry. The 10 tapestries were begun in 1633 and finished in 1637, and were based on paintings by Simon Vouet, first painter to King Louis XIII, who reigned in France until 1643. The king's chief minister, Cardinal Jules Mazarin, ordered the tapestries in about 1633. When they were finished 4 years later, Cardinal Antonio Barberini of Italy purchased them on December 12. Antonio Barberini was made a cardinal at the young age of 20 by his uncle, Pope Urban VIII. With his brothers Francesco and Taddeo, he helped to shape politics, religion, art, and music of the 17th century. Antonio bought the tapestries and took them home to the Palazzo Barberini in Rome. These were hung as space permitted, not chronologically, according to the story, in 2 rooms, 7 in a former audience hall of his elder brother Francesco, and 3 of them in a bedchamber. In 1640, some of the tapestries were lent to the Church of El Gesù as part of a visit of Pope Urban VIII at the 100th-year anniversary of the Jesuit order. For this occasion, the church received elaborate decorations, including our tapestries, as recorded in this painting of the time period. Antonio played a big role in this decoration. Recently, a scholar recreated the look of the church based on this painting. And here's another view. The tapestries were returned to the Barberini Palace and stayed there until Princess Barberini sold them to an American collector in 1889. Charles Mather Folk made his fortune as a wool merchant and traveled to Europe to buy artwork, specifically tapestries, and ended up buying most of those owned by the Barberini family. He brought them to the United States to reside in his home in Washington, D.C. Shortly after his death in 1909, Florence Vanderbilt Twombly bought the tapestries in 1913. This heiress to the famous Gilded Age Vanderbilt family brought the tapestries to her home in Convent, New Jersey, where they were displayed in the great drawing room. After her death, they descended to her daughter Ruth, who sold them at auction in 1955. They were bought by a subsidiary of French & Company, a well-known decorative arts dealer in New York City, who had them for sale by 1956. And this is where Flint comes into the story, because it was at this dealer's showroom in New York City that Viola E. Bray saw the tapestries and purchased them for the museum. Mrs. Bray, shown here with her daughter Bertha, or Mrs. William Richards, was a Flint native and philanthropist whose husband Everett was one of the lawyers who brokered the deal to create General Motors. Mrs. Bray had a passion for collecting glass, particularly paperweights, but bought the tapestry collection and accompanying furnishings strictly for museum display. She never lived with a single piece. She bought the tapestries the day after Christmas, December 26, 1959, and plans began shortly after to construct a gallery, with funds also donated by Mrs. Bray to house the works that she purchased. The gallery was unveiled in November 1961, but sadly, Mrs. Bray passed away a few months before its opening. Fortunately for us, her legacy lives on in the gallery and other works she donated or provided funds to purchase. Thank you for going with me on this journey of 383 years and 6,293 miles. Next time, in Act 2, how does a story about 11th century Jerusalem end up a popular subject in 17th century France?